Welcome to my kitchen. We're going to be preparing spicy eggplant and potato side dish. And as you can see, I've already chosen my potatoes. I have 6 potatoes and 1 large eggplant. Now you can use a smaller eggplant if you prefer. And you need a good cutting board and a good sharp chef's knife. I also listed in the directions that you're going to need a bowl of cold water with salt in it. So have this prepared before you even start. As I also listed in the directions, I prefer to leave the skin on my potatoes because there's a lot of vitamins in the skins of potatoes. And it adds extra texture, a unique texture to your dish. I also begin to slice my potatoes in quarters. This allows me to see if there's any rot in the potato, and then I can cut it out. And then from there I take the 2 slices and I end up cutting them into 8. So each potato ends up making roughly anywhere from 8 to 16 bite-sized chunks of potatoes. This then leaves us with the eggplant. And what we're going to do here is we're going to sit there and cut the top off. And we're going to cut the base off. And so what we're going to do next, because we want even chunks, so we're going to sit there and cut down the length of the eggplant. So we're going to keep going down and down because we want to get down to little bite-sized chunks. You can leave them big if you want to. They will cook down. However, they just look better when they're just a little bit more bite-sized rather than having gigantic pieces of eggplant in your dish. So to speed things up, what we're going to do then is after we get half of the eggplant sliced into little slices, you can then begin to cut into the sizes that you prefer. And we're going to do this until we get the entire eggplant cut up. Now, what you're also going to want to do, because eggplant and potatoes both oxidize very quickly in open air, is you want to sit there and put both the eggplant and the potatoes into the prepared salt water. This will keep them looking fresh until we are ready to cook them. Next, we've sliced up our red and green peppers, and you can use fresh. In my case, I use frozen. When I bring them out of the garden, I cut them in half and de-seed them and put them in my freezer for later use. So here they are cut up. So we already have prepared our red and green peppers, our onions, and our Roma tomatoes. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to cut the lemon in half, and we're going to use an old-fashioned juicer or reamer. Now, a lot of people sometimes will throw lemons away because they look at the outside and they say, looks like it might be rotten. However, when you cut it, you find out that no, it's not rotten at all, and the juice is still usable. Now, I've also have 7 cloves of garlic here. And I have sliced them. I take the time to peel them because I actually like to eat the garlic in my recipe. Some people don't like to eat the actual garlic, and it's okay. You can crush it and throw it in whole and then pick them out later if that's what you prefer. If you just want the flavor of the garlic in your food. So then I began to sit there and actually crush up into finer pieces the garlic. You don't have to polarize it until it's hardly anything, but you want to get a little bit smaller. And then you want to divide it in half, pretty much. So go ahead and, because you're going to fry some, and then later on you're going to add the rest into the recipe. So now what we have already done is we've got our sugar, we've got our cumin and our hot chili powder, cilantro, curry powder, coriander. If I don't have fresh ginger, it's okay. You can use crystallized ginger and cut it up. We've got our Roma tomatoes, onions, and the red and green peppers. I have juiced the lemon, and half of my garlic is waiting now to be fried. Oh, and I don't want to forget turmeric. And then also I use kosher salt. Okay, welcome to my stove. We've already chosen the big cast iron Dutch oven and the accompanying lid. And we have another fry pan, cast iron of course. And what I've already done, just to show it, I have the cumin already set out and I have the curry. Now you're probably wondering, oh, that looks like a lot more than a teaspoon, and you're right. I have never been a cook that measures exactly. I'm the kind of a cook that a pinch here, a dollop there, a squeeze here, teaspoon here, tablespoon there, sprinkle, whatever suits my fancy at the moment that I'm cooking. So, you're right. There is more in that pan than what you're going to be using for the first time. So go ahead, follow the directions, and then you can adjust to your taste as time goes by. So we're going to add our onions. And we're going to add our oil. You can use whatever healthy oil you prefer. This right here is canola. And we're going to go ahead and drizzle about 2 to 3 tablespoons of oil in there. And the reason, again, I'm using more is because as this cooks, I'm going to begin to mix the spice in with the onion. And I like to use wooden implements. They generally just simply do better. So the onions will take care of themselves, so I don't want the spices to burn. So I'm going to be moving the spices into the oil a little bit because we're going to begin to make our paste. And we still have our eggplant and our potatoes in water. You want to keep a little bit of water over here, because as the potatoes, as the onions begin to brown, and I know it's going to be a little bit difficult. Normally I would not put the spices in there yet, but I wanted to speed up the process for the video. And as long as there is oil and it hasn't burnt, we're good to go. Okay, we got our onions cooking. So what we're going to do next is add our garlic in and our ginger. In this case, I've used crystallized ginger. I do want to add, and you're going to have some splatter, but you want to add just a teeny bit of water, because the spice paste is starting to, even though I lowered the fire, the spice paste is beginning to clump up. So we want to loosen that. And so next we want to start adding in the chili powder. So now we've added our turmeric. And don't worry about the salt level, because even if you make a mistake with the salt and you think you've added too much, the potatoes will take it out. And as most cooks know, that if you think you have added too much, even if you're cooking a dish that does not include potatoes, you can add a peeled potato quartered and let it begin to soak up your excess salt. So now we've got our garlic and our ginger frying along with the onions and the spice paste. Now I've added the rest of the water because my paste was getting a little too thick, so I went ahead and added a lot more water, as a matter of fact. And we're done with this process. Now what we're going to do next, I've already drained the potatoes and the eggplant. This little pot, this frying pan isn't going to hold all of this. So we're going to put it in our Dutch oven. And as I said in the written directions, this is going to actually fill up your pot quite a lot, or so it looks like. It will reduce. So even if you think there's not enough room in there, there will be. So what we're going to be doing next is taking this spice paste and pouring it on top of our eggplant and potato mix. What we're going to be doing, processing next, is our coriander. Now this is an old-fashioned coffee grinder, but after so many years of using, like 20 years, my handle broke off and it's very difficult to hand grind coffee. So I didn't want to throw it away, so it's now my spice grinder. And so we're going to put whole coriander seed in. Not a whole lot. And we're going to shake it down and get all the coriander to get down in there. And then we're going to begin to grind it. So what you end up with is a drawer, probably about a good tablespoonful of ground coriander, and it just smells wonderful. Okay, we're at the step. I have added the sugar off video, and we have our paste sitting on top. So what we're going to do next is I have a cup or maybe a cup and a half of water here, and I'm going to go ahead and wash some of this paste down into the potato and eggplant. And start to mix the water has, because of the volume of the eggplant and potato, the water, if you can see it down there, looks like you have about 2 cups of water in there, when really you have only 1 to 1.5. And we're going to go ahead and start turn the fire on. And we want to do it on a high fire because we have a lot of potatoes and a lot of eggplant to simmer down. Now, part of the recipe also includes putting in yogurt. Now what I use is Brown Cow plain cream top yogurt. I figure if you're going to have yogurt, might as well put in the best. It's full fat, So if you have a problem with fat foods, you may want to use fat-free or low-fat. It's up to you. Now the recipe calls for like a tablespoon. The original recipe called for a tablespoon of yogurt. However, I love yogurt. So I actually use 1 whole cup. But you can do what you see as what you like. So now I've added the yogurt in. As I said, I add about a cup of yogurt. And we want to begin to mix this down, especially get it down into the fluid below, because now we've had our spice paste and it has already dissolved. So we have a lovely spice broth below. So we're going to mix this up and try to get all of the eggplant and we're going to go ahead and we're going to simmer this covered for 15 minutes. In the past, I have only simmered it. I used to add the potatoes in last, but then I found out that the potatoes weren't done by the time I got done with the recipe. So I now add the potatoes and the eggplant together to begin the cooking process. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and cover this. And well, we've already seen a reduction in the level of potatoes and eggplant in our Dutch oven. So now what we're going to do next is we're going to add the remaining garlic. We're going to add our tomatoes and our peppers and get them mixed in. Of course, this will slow down our boil that we had going. You can see just how lovely this looks. It looks very festive with the red and the green and the dark purple of the eggplant and the white of the potato. We're also going to go ahead and add that lovely smelling coriander, ground coriander that we ground up. Now we want to go ahead and mix this in because it's going to give its distinctive flavors. Coriander is wonderful. It has a bit of spice and a bit of a bite to it, but not so overwhelmingly that you can't stand it. Sometimes when you get in with your spicier foods, sometimes I've noticed, sometimes people will cook it and they add heat to the dish, notwithstanding, and they add it just simply for the heat, and there's no flavor to it. So that's not usually a good deal when you do it that way. Now, we're also going to add more salt, because the little bit of salt that we added, I can guarantee you, is not going to be enough to season this dish. And don't forget, even when you sit there and you add what you think is a ton of salt, those potatoes are going to leach it out. So don't worry about putting too much salt in. When you have a potato dish, you can never put too much salt in, because those potatoes will take it all out. So add away. Now what we want to do also now, because I love fresh pepper. It's not technically in the directions, but I love fresh pepper, ground black pepper. And we want to taste this. So we want to get a clean spoon. You should always get a clean spoon. We want to go ahead and taste this and see what our spices are tasting like. Right now, It does taste very salty because I just put the salt in. But the spices are already rich and mellow. Just to cook some more so that the peppers and tomatoes begin to cook. The salt should already be gone out of it. So we'll be back. Okay, we are on our final stages. And after everything has been cooked, the last things that we need to do is add our lemon juice for a little bit of a kick. And then we want to finalize it by adding our cilantro. And you can add as much as you enjoy or as little. Now what we have also found out is that the eggplant had more fluid than planned. So when this happens and you end up and it's just a little bit too juicy, rather than cooking it until everything is just a mush, don't hesitate to go ahead and add a little bit of cornstarch. Take some of your broth and add cornstarch into the mix. This will help to thicken it without having to wait, because you don't want to risk having the peppers, the potatoes, and the eggplants turn to total mush. The eggplants are already getting a little bit overcooked. So, by adding the cornstarch, that will thicken it up to the degree that we want it to thicken it up to. Now, what we're also having along with it is pork steak. Is a wonderful addition to these potatoes. And if you remember, we cooked the spice paste in that black cast iron pan. Well, even though we scraped it, there was still a lot of spice left on the bottom of that pan. So by adding fresh oil into the pan, and then seasoning the pork steaks with onion and garlic powder and salt and pepper. By adding the oil, the spice paste came alive again and thinned out. So now we've added the additional spices to the pork steak. So we're going to go ahead and let that cook. And it looks like this is ready. It kind of looks like a stew. But we're going to go ahead and put some on our plate. And it looks really delicious. And so there we have it. And then we're just going to wait for our pork sticks to cook. And we will have one delicious meal. I hope you enjoy.